living in the moment, and the moment is the future.
With Pam and John. This SPEDTalk.
Welcome to SPEDTalk with Pam,
and John,
also known as The Calm.
before the storm.
Our purpose is to elevate the conversation and amplify special education resources.
And our why is all about the kids. You know, Pam, there are so many organizations and people around Texas who are just making it happen for kids with disabilities.
So let's make this a platform to celebrate their efforts, because special education is about making the impossible possible.
Well, here we go. TCASE 2020. Great minds come together around great ideas, right? I am so excited we had a chance to kind of come together to do this. I know this is kind of the end of the conference, and my ride or die, Pam isn't here with me right now, but I have two more of my ride or dies with me. And yeah, I mean, here we are, 2020, living in the future. I talked about this a little while ago about how, I can remember when I was a young person. I feel like I'm getting older, but I just feel younger every day. But I remember when I was young thinking, man, 2020, the movie, right? I mean, A Space Odyssey, and, that's the future. And now it's funny how, slowly that pot just keeps boiling and boiling. And here we are boiling in 2020, right? Living in the future. Mm-hmm. And so, I think, how do we do justice to the fact that we have so much change and growth and opportunity through technological advances and an understanding of child development and how children learn and grow and need certain things. And yet we're still kind of stuck in many ways in so many of our practices from, the 1900s and early 2000s. Absolutely. And so, but I'm excited to be sitting around a table with two dear friends and colleagues, Dr. Coral Wilkins from Frisco ISD, previous SPED liaison, who has had many experiences in that role, and now is there in Frisco ISD. And Harvey Hughes, the great Harvey Hughes, formerly of C's Web, right? And creator of C's Web, and now and then Hero for a period of time, right? Didn't Hero morph into smart data dashboards?
Yeah, we kind of took off the Hero a little bit and left it smart data. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, and so like for us to come around the table, I know each of us, colleagues, friends in our own right, and then collectively, every chance we get, it seems like we rub up against ideas and push kind of these belief systems. And so I'm excited to be here and talk about kind of like what is education in 2020 for kind of our at-risk kids, for these, not just kids with disabilities, but our EL students, our kids that maybe are coming to us from pockets of poverty and and so forth, because it's everywhere you go. We have these same kind of things occurring. And so, man, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Super exciting.
So we get to share some stuff today and talk to your listeners and just give them some ideas of some great things that are going on.
Yeah. And so, Harvey, talk a little bit about kind of what this intersectionality between education, at-risk students, threat assessments, where you are in regards to where you've been in education.
Well, so I feel like I never build anything that I wasn't, coached or mentored to do. Right. Yeah. So what happens is I end up, I know I talk a lot, John, like you, but also I think
that's why we get along.
I think I actually have a knack for listening, and absolutely, but not from an educator's point of view, but from a problem solving technology point of view. Yeah. And that coupled with our passion to help at-risk kids, it motivates us, right, to design things that will make educators more effective. Some of the things you talked about yesterday in your session. Yeah. And so all that came from is that like you were saying, Coral, there's a lot of data out there. Right. It's just not organized in a way that we can quickly get to it. And time is of the essence in a lot of these buildings that we work with, where they have to quickly understand the whole picture, which is an impossible task, and really understand that whole child, and react in a way that's effective, efficient, and yet very passionate, about those individuals. And so, so what happened is we've learned that at risk means a wide variety of things. Sure. It could be, just disengaging or falling behind in math, all the way through, dyslexia or characteristics of dyslexia with reading for all students, because, we're learning that, struggling in reading is a big thing. And wrongful. What we really try to do is not quickly identify the student in a category, but understand why that student is struggling. But it goes on to dropping out rates, to bullying, which is a big passion of mine, suicide, identifying prevention, and then threat assessment. So we end up, once we get into a district, we end up doing a lot of different things for a lot of different people based on that core data being organized better. But I have been coached by people in education. I'm not an educator. I say that every time I walk in the door, but they remind me that they are educators, and they know what they want. A lot of times they just need a little bit of help on trying to get it organized in a way that's meaningful to them.
Hey, go ahead.
So one of the things that you hit on was the threat assessment and suicide and all those things. And it just made me think, none of those have any demographic. They know no demographic. So,
it's like lightning striking.
Right. So when we're talking about it, we all have our biases that we're not even aware of most of the time, right? And so sometimes we focus on that wrong population. And it's super cool when you get data that says, this is who's having the issue, and it might not be somebody you suspect because the data is right there. And you also mentioned we all have a lot of data, but we can't get to it, and that happens so often where we have a student who has reached out to our counselor and said, "Hey, I'm really having struggles. I feel like I'm thinking of suicide," and then that conversation never comes full circle to anyone else. And then later special ed, or it might not be special ed, but special ed might be looking at the student with a disability, maybe some emotional disturbance, maybe anxiety. And when we're looking at that student and we're seeing all kinds of behaviors that don't quite fit this child and then don't have that whole picture, we never know. And fortunately, we do a lot of talking, but the bigger the district gets and the more data we get, because guess what? We get data every day. There's so many great tools out there, but the more we have, actually, the less connected we are.
I love that. I think you're right, Coral. I feel like so often what we do is, that cliche of silos is a cliche because we operate in silos, because in our systems, the way they're created, we have to operationalize what we do through silos, or else it's just all of this white noise coming like through this huge funnel towards us, and we can't manage it. So what we do is silo it down to a manageable size. But do we actually then take the data that we're collecting and reconnect it to the bigger picture? So, so Harvey, you said something earlier that spoke to me, and I think in a lot of our conversations, the reason I get charged up is because, what we talk about a lot of times is trying to look at that whole child, trying to look at, hey, this part of this child needs special ed services, and this part of this child may need counseling interventions, and this part of this child may need a dyslexia program. And this, but this is not a special ed child or a counseling child or a child or a Poverty child. These are children with, kind of the similar needs on that continuum of relevance, right? And so, I feel like we talk a lot about reactivity and proactivity. I feel like no matter what, anything we ever do is always in some ways reactive. Because we are humans and we function from within ourselves outward into an environment in which we're reacting. That proactive piece is saying, okay, before or in spite of or during the ongoing efforts to help kids, let's stop for a minute, manage the whirlwind around us enough to slow down and say, how would we create something that would be proactive? Because, you don't get to stop being reactive just because we want to be proactive. Well, and I feel like that's kind of where what we talk about a lot goes to.
You know what, John, I say this all the time. I've never met an educator that isn't passionate and proactive by human nature. They're nurturers. They're natural born nurturers, much like a nurse or any
caregivers.
On every Monday morning, they're thinking all weekend. I'm going to school and I'm going to change a student's life. I'm going to change the environment that I'm in. And immediately we walk into a reactionary mode, right? And it usually detours our, it's. And so my hope is that through our systems, we can help shift more of the attention to being less reactive to more proactive, especially at early age. Now that's a big play, right? It's a cast a wide net. So we still have students bringing tough things to our office, and we have to deal with them.
Yeah.
But if we can start looking at that holistically, like saying, okay, was there any sign of like were they bullied last year?
Yeah.
Right.
And is this manifesting in a way this year? You're going to say, or is there a sign of any kind of early warning about that? What I actually say that we do is it's the at risk for me is disengaging.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that student disengaging? That's the most proactive way. I love working with counselors. They have an impossible task. School leaderships ask counselors all the time, we should know in our building every student's strengths and weaknesses in every moment. But it's impossible. That's an impossible task. Yeah. We've actually got it down to where you can actually go in and look at those students based on some disengaging risking indicators like attendance and behavior and grades failure. But they still have to drill into sometimes 2,000 students, right? Yeah. So we're going a step further to even saying, well, what is their academic failure? Is it in reading? Is it in math? So what can I really start? What's the cause of the effect? Yeah, a cause or effect. And what I'm seeing nationally is secondary is really dealing with more of they have this sense of urgency. Every junior high principal I know has a sense of, I cannot pass this student on to the high school ill prepared for high school, right? Because they may not get that individualized attention at that high school level. Yeah. So they really want to really do that. Now in elementary, I think holistically, they think, okay, I want to solve the mystery behind this. And so we're working with secondary, a high school, junior high, middle school, and elementary, and all different levels.
Varying perspectives on what it is. Trying to accomplish.
But you hit on something that you didn't want to pass them on, and we're in such this age of accountability right now, and it's almost to our detriment. And please don't ever hear me say accountability is not necessary, because it absolutely is. Right. But we are so focused on accountability that we immediately run to, they're failing academically. Mm-hmm. And so we look at our RTI systems and all of those pieces, and you keep saying whole child. We're not looking at the whole child. And, this has been going on really since the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And one of my passions is behavior. So I research a lot of behavior, and I researched for my thesis for my master's degree. I wanted to know, are we stressing our children out? Are we hurrying them too much?
High risk environments.
Yes. So I started looking at that, and we were pushing them really quite hard. And that was the very beginning of the disintegration, if you will, of character development. And I don't want to take us on a character development plan here, but that was the disintegration of it. Now, fast forward, I come to my dissertation 6 years ago. My dissertation was on social emotional learning. Yeah. And if students have that, are they more likely to be able to achieve academically? Yeah. In between, I talked about RTI and behavior, RTI and academics. And so what was interesting is that I found that if they have those social emotional skills, they are academically more successful. Yeah. What we haven't had, though, all these years is anything that helps us see both sides of the student's profile. We've only seen academic. And what I really love, and all this to say, what I love about what Harvey's doing with the smart data, now I can see both sides. Yes. I can see where is the student socially and emotionally. Yes. Because honestly, the counselor has that component most of the time.
That's right.
And then where do I see the student academically? Well, that's our RTI committees and our curriculum people. Now Harvey's found a way to bring that together in one piece.
Reconnect those data points.
I was coached well. I was coached by very good people.
Now, though, I can, if I'm a leader on a campus or a district, I can grab that kid and go, oh my gosh, this kid's feeling, and I thought all the reason was because he just didn't want to, or she just didn't want to. Now I can go in and go, oh my gosh, this child has ACEs scores that show me they've had early childhood trauma. Yeah. I can go in and go, oh my gosh, this child has had a suicide outcry. I can go in and go, they just lost a parent. I can go in and go, we've had discipline consistently in that math class. Yeah. Are they struggling in math? Right. I have all those pieces that I've never had before.
Yeah. So in other words, you have these separate indicators that would say this child is becoming disenfranchised, becoming resistant to interventions, becoming maybe problematic within an educational setting. But usually we look at that information and those data points in silos. A lot of times not just constraints preventing us coming together as teams to really connect that information about one child collectively in
Right.
that system. And so by using something like smart data, what you're looking at, it sounds like, is taking all of that data, putting it together, and it not just being lag data from 1 month to the next, or from one testing cycle to the next, for, at the state level, but taking real like benchmark data, classroom
That's
data,
right, you got it.
and
Absolutely.
putting it into actionable kind of form, so that you could actually, if you have the capacity to implement on supporting those needs, and that's another issue, is the capacity it takes to really implement at that level. Sometimes we show ourselves data and we say, oh my gosh, now what do we do? So that's a problem of progress, right? But that's a good problem to have.
And I'm talking about Harvey's product without him, so he can elaborate. But he's got this. The cool part of his platform right now, not only does it give you data, but it then says, here's the interventions to implement. And it's like, because I'm going to tell you this, that's another piece in the liaison work we did. When I got to go talk to the campuses, we found the majority of the people all said, we know what, we don't know how. And so Harvey's product, and I'm not trying to sell his product, but what he has to offer here says, hey, not only does Susie have a deficit in math, I'm making stuff up right now. Susie has a social emotional need. Susie also is struggling at home. They are struggling for whatever reason. And then it says, here's interventions to mitigate that need.
Yes.
And so I can go,
we can act on that now.
Because our teachers are busy. They're trying hard. But you know what? They don't have all those tools in their toolkit. But to be able to be told, here's the intervention to do, that gives me something to go research.
Right. Absolutely.
And that, I think, is that's the most powerful piece.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, it's because the three of us are innovators. I would say that. I think anybody who knew us would say that, right? Yes. And so sometimes we might
troublemakers.
When we're brainstorming and problem solving, we may say something wrong, and if something just said wrong today, let's give us a bucket to throw it in there and forget about it.
Say something wrong?
No, but I'm getting ready to. But so proactive is easy to say and hard to do.
And that's the truth.
And everybody wants to do that, and naturally, right? Naturally.
Yeah.
And so what my concept was my concept has always been rising tide raises all ships. So if it's good if you figured out a method that works well, and I can get that data, do my part, get that data, and that intervention or the referral to that intervention works smoothly, because the worst thing we could do is put them in the wrong intervention because we're in a hurry to do that. And that's what I learned from special ed back in the day. And that is, we have to make sure background information, reason for referral, evidence-based, there's almost, you don't want to stop it too soon. Again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but you don't want the process to flow naturally. But at the same time, you don't want to hurry up and put them in a bucket just so they're in a bucket.
That's right.
And so along comes this social emotional learning. And I'm seeing this nationally, is that I was always taught, think of intervention, but really social emotional learning has now become more of a curriculum.
It should,
And where I'm seeing that
in all aspects, into everything,
completely throughout your day.
Yeah,
because students are missing that, and somewhere in their life, and the PLC teams are seeing that. And I'm working with a lot of innovative educators that are saying, so I think of things as implement, measure, adjust, and do it again. And so the SEL part, the social emotional learning programs, now I'm asking, okay, well, how do we judge success, and how do we make sure that it can be done in every district, small or large? And I'm also seeing SEL being a key factor in some of the alternative learning programs. Because when they're moved over there, it used to be kind of a dumping ground, if you don't mind. Not so much in Texas, maybe, but in our other states.
I would say in the old days, you could have called it that. Yes.
Yeah, and now, so now I see some innovative educators using SEL as a mechanism, a methodology. And so now they want to know how. So let's judge. Let's see how is it working? What's working?
You hit on something a minute ago, Harvey, and I think this is something we often do as we try to become proactive. Whether we intervene or whether we integrate a topic, a subject, a practice, into a setting, rarely do we develop the mechanism, the tool, the measurement for which to track success. Ahead of time. So what we do is we try things and then we kind of judge if we think we're seeing results, versus take something where you can actually capture real-time data up front and use
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
as a measure for
Yeah.
success. And so I feel like in some ways, if data is actionable, if I can see lead data coming out of classrooms that students are producing that is relevant and is visible on a dashboard or some type of a visible platform, and then as we implement these interventions, or if we do them, if we integrate them into curriculum and things like that, then we have a tool to actually assess if the interventions or the application of this curriculum is actually showing dividends across academics, across,
You got it.
you know, so to me, it seems like, it seems like you're kind of hitting on
Well,
that, I
and
think.
you talked about the social and emotional learning as the curriculum too. And what we forget is in education, we do something that is frustrating to me because we kind of label stuff. We label everything
Right,
PLC,
right.
SEL,
Acronyms
Yeah, it has to fit in a
RTI.
bucket. It has to have a
Right.
definition. Yeah.
But SEL is really rooted in emotion,
Mhm.
in EQI, in your emotional quotient.
Intelligence, right.
And what is your emotional intelligence? So
Mhm.
it is really the responsibility of us as educators to help our students with those emotional components. Because right now here we are, 21st century learning. Like, we talk about 21st century learning. It's 2020, y'all.
Right.
We are in it. We've
You're
been
the
in it
vision,
for 20
right? 2020.
years.
Right.
Right.
Isn't that the truth?
We've been in it for 20 years. So
Right.
if we want our kids ready for the workforce right now,
Yeah.
they have to be able to know how to manage their emotions. We're not chasing those
Yeah.
emotions away.
Yeah.
They need to know how to regulate themselves in an uncomfortable position. I mean,
Yeah.
they need to know how to persevere,
Yeah.
and even when it's not fun, because emotional intelligence is about being able to handle the good, the bad, and the ugly
Yeah.
in any moment,
I
and
love
how
that.
you react to it.
Yeah.
And that's Coral's definition of it, but really that's what it is. And so when we're seeing anxiety increase. I mean, there was just some National Institute of Mental Health just came out recently about anxiety continues to increase. I
So-
mean, it was up. So
I'll tell
20
you.
years ago in my thesis,
Yeah.
they said that students 20 years ago had higher anxiety than children who were institutionalized in the 50s.
Yeah.
And that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now here we are 20 years later.
Mhm.
They said it is skyrocketing, our
Mhm.
suicide rates, everything.
Mhm.
And so if we're looking at that emotional learning,
Yes.
that social emotional quotient, we can't not address that within the context of academics. And so now it's not just about 10 years from now we figure out, oh man, we need to track that. It's
Yeah.
I need it now, and I need it in
Yes.
the moment. And that, again, going back to what we were saying, that's what your product does for us.
Well-
It's just huge. That's my favorite book.
So The Coddling of the American Mind, right? That is a book that I've recommended to quite a few people because after I read it, and I do Audible, so usually my reading
I
now
read
is through
it.
my ears, not through my eyes. And I found that's an interesting thing when you figure out how you process better as you get older.
Oh, I've done that. I actually read it and
I do
and
both.
hear it at the same time.
okay.
So I use two stimulants.
That's
right.
nice. And so me, a lot of times I'll read it and then I'll do Audible, or I'll do Audible and then I'll go back and read it. And then I would
I
love
do
to
it
be
at the
able to
same
do
time.
both, yeah.
I'll highlight it and read it. And then
But they
as it-
really, the authors really hit on this fragility movement and this idea that, just because of this tendency in society now to feel like we need to protect our children. And, and the thing about it is like the media tells us one thing and these messages we get, the introduction of this little fancy thing, the iPhone, the inattentive nature of society now, the shortening of our attention span, the idea that we have to protect kids from everything. And in turn, what we end up doing is making them more susceptible to the dangers of those things.
That's right.
Because they have never built up a tolerance to those things, the brain chemistry and managing stress and
Right.
that you go through from failures and struggles as a child
Right.
that actually allow you to grow and develop in brain neurology and physical form to be able to manage those at greater levels as you get older. The absence of which leads to complete chemical imbalance in the brain at a certain age when you have not developed that kind of equalization over time. And so I feel like those are things that a lot of times we just don't realize we're doing as a society, which is protecting kids from every possible thing because we think they're fragile when actually, humans are not fragile. Like we are robust. We need to struggle. We need to fail, but we need supports there in which to kind of lift us up and help us along when we do.
Well, and that's the beauty, because academically we've known for years how to intervene. We really, when you look at the iteration of intervening, it doesn't change much academically. And
it's a problem-solving model. That's been around forever.
And then in the 80s, Goldman came out with emotional intelligence, right? And so we had 20 years to marry on it before the 20th century came. Yeah. But right now, we are much smarter as an education group. I mean, what we do in our profession is wonderful. We're continuously learning. So now that we know this, we can't not implement in a proactive model.
You can't unknow once you know it.
Right.
I mean, you got it when you know better. You got to start to do it.
Shine a light on the problem. You got to fix it.
And so, well, now that we know it, the question is how do we find out what we need to know to intervene?
Yeah, let's not make assumptions.
Even intervene.
That's
Just
right.
How do we need to know?
That's right.
So that's why we need not just that academic data anymore. We need all of the data that gives us all the social and emotional importance of the student, and then that gives us the opportunity to appropriately intervene. And appropriately, I mean, because if you appropriately intervene, you don't intervene for life. Right? You
the idea is to fade services.
Right. And I mean, just think about the things that we've done in our lives. Braces. Let's use braces for example, right? Your teeth are crooked. And they intervene. We get braces. Boom,
it's painful for a little while. You sacrifice time.
And I'm surely wouldn't say student learning is about braces, but it's the same kind of thing. When we know we can intensively intervene very quickly and boom, move on. Because my teeth are not going to be crooked again.
And you don't want to be like me with an overbite that they had to correct, right?
No,
you said something yesterday in your session that just, I literally was writing 3 pages of notes I couldn't stop writing, but there was one thing that really stuck out yesterday. You said that in this day and age, where we are now, you think we're giving, or that leaders in education are giving some license to fail a little bit, that they should try that being nebulous, or that I'll forget the term you exactly use, but doing nothing
apathy
is worse than doing it wrong. Because now with data that we can, because data doesn't fix everything, right? It's early warning, early intervention, but if we can identify what doesn't work, at least you're doing something, and you're moving a needle one way or the other, but you're not doing nothing.
Yeah, Harvey, that was, I think, in response to this idea right now in Texas that, all this change is coming at us, especially in the world of special ed, right? There's just all this change. And like, I crafted something like right after that session, because it hit me, and it just was in my brain, this idea of change. And we focus so much on change, and we get afraid by change. And so we put all our energy into managing change. But so these ideas that just kind of came to me where change requires choice. Choice is tough, right? And choice creates confusion. So when we have to choose too much, there's confusion, but confusion leads to chaos. And so chaos in the system, I think, is what a lot of us are experiencing in Texas right now. Sometimes chaos creates apathy, a failure to act, but really, chaos leads to constraints, and constraints lead to creativity.
If we want innovators grab on.
That's right. And creativity leads back to choice. Choice captures that chaos and controls for change. And so within this system, with all this chaos in the system in Texas right now, is an opportunity. The state agency, TEA, is really saying, hey guys, show us grace. We'll show you grace. We're all growing and evolving and changing together. In this moment, take some risks, try some innovations, try to do things differently, systemically, in practice, through operations, I believe through governance, right? Like, how do we push this envelope forward and take advantage? One thing I've learned from some of the greatest mentors I've had, and let me just preface this by saying some of my mentors are 5 years old, 9 years old, because my own children mentor me daily on my failures, right? I mean, they're my personal trainers and stuff. But some of my mentors that are older and more experienced than me, leaders in their own right, have like really imparted one thing on me real strongly, and that is that leadership, you're dealing with complex, multidimensional issues. You're always going to have chaos or a failure or some kind of tragedy. And an effective leader knows how to leverage that chaos, that tragedy, to implement systemic change, improvements.
John, I work in, a lot of times when I'm called into districts that have on the compliance measurement,
Yeah.
they've failed to do some things over time. And you're right. I think they're almost free. They understand the framework that they have to operate it, but they're given grace and given the ability to say, innovate out of your way out of this.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're tracking that and making sure what works, what doesn't work.
Yes.
And so years ago, I was in college. And by the way, I'm like you said something about better than that.
Yeah.
I was an at-risk kid going through high school, and if it hadn't been for an educator that turned, he was assistant superintendent that really liked me for some reason. He liked me.
Yeah.
He helped me go to college and helped me get through high school and go to college, and he's the one who eventually came back and said, "Hey." After I as you know, I worked for NASA and for several years, and I worked for Walmart at Mr. Sam Walton for several years. And when I was working back at Walmart, and he and I became friends after all this. Yeah. And he said, "I want you to build me a software for special ed." And I said, "I don't know how to do it, but if you teach me, I will help you." So it was actually Dr. Ron Bradshaw. He asked me. He said, "I need you to create a special ed software." He said, "I don't know exactly what they're asking for, but can you go over there and interview?"
You didn't know nothing about special ed.
And I said,
you just knew how to create databases and software and things like that.
I just knew how to move data together in a meaningful way. Yeah. And so, and I said, if you'll teach me, I'll do it, but I don't know what to do for you. Yeah. And so they had actually two directors, they kind of co-shared it. And it was really a great situation, large district in Arkansas. And they literally taught me exactly what they wanted. I mean, they coached me and mentored me over many years.
Here's the data points. Here's what we need. Here's what we need to be able to do.
Ironically, they retired and actually came to work for my company down the road. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But it's all, rising tide raises all ships, right? And so our philosophy has always been, if somebody can figure something out, but I came up with this model. I call it the API or the APT model, API. Assess, plan, and implement, right? And it's not, I didn't come up with it. It's a problem-solving model. Yeah. But I learned that from a bread delivery guy when I was in college who they trusted me. So they had me send me in early in the morning before school, college. And I would, and this guy would come in with his bread and he would have this bread and this. And I never knew there's so many different kinds of bread. And he would walk through it and I got 4 of these, 5 of these, 6 of these, 7 of these. And I'm like, I said, "Oh my goodness." I said,
overload.
I said, "Yeah, how do you manage all this?" That's literally what I said. And he said to me, and I remember I was probably 19 years old, right? And he goes, he looked at me and he was serious as could be. He said, "Oh, you got to know what you got to know what you're doing. You got to assess your problem. You got to build a plan. You got to implement that plan and monitor." And I'm like, I'm writing as fast as I can.
Yes.
And through college, and I had a great college experience with computer science and whatnot. Yeah. That was probably the best lesson in life I've ever learned, how to solve a problem
in a split second, capturing that information when the red guy walks in.
John, the whole madness of all this is all I did was, when educators would say, "I've got a situation," I would come back to that API model: assess, plan, and implement. Yeah. And that's constantly what we're doing. So when you said yesterday, even if you do something wrong, learn from it and perfect it and do it right again the next day. But don't wait till you think you can do it right. Right. But darn sure don't do nothing. That's right. And I think that's the world we're in, especially in some of the districts I'm working in, where there's only one way up. From that point. Yeah. And not all the districts I work with are that way, but they're focused on their point of view, and they have to fix a few things. Yeah. But that key leadership, again, that's so valuable.
Huge. It really is.
He's talking. What you're talking about is what has been captured in lean manufacturing. Plan, do, act, and then check.
Little bets, right? Living through bets.
Plan, do, act, check on it. Yeah. That's the part where we miss in education. Yeah. It's not about that we don't check on it. We've only ever really had lag data.
That's it, lag data.
Now your data
that's a great way to put
real time.
Talk about the difference between lag and lead data, because I think a lot of people, this was new to us a few years back. We understand what it is, but you had to tell me.
Understand the words, right? But what does it
mean?
Lead data mean? Well, lag data is that data that is captured in a moment and then it might be captured 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago,
2 years ago,
a year ago. I can think of some of our accountability data that we get right now, like for disproportionality.
Yes.
It's 2 years old by the time we see it.
Right.
Or sometimes our other data.
You're spot on with that. Absolutely.
It's so many years ago by the time we see it that we may have already done some planning, and we might not be on track.
Right.
But our lead data is different when we say, okay, we want to decrease. Let's say, and here's a place where people are often disproportionate so many times in the discipline of our African American students, right? So we say to ourselves, we want to move forward with that right now. And what we want to do is we want to make some changes. Maybe we want to look at our unconscious bias. Maybe we want to do a few things. Yeah. But our data is 2 years old. So the next time we get to measure is 2 years later. We don't even know if it worked.
Right.
And so lead data is the things that we say, here's what we want to do. These are the things we're going to do in the meantime, kind of like you were talking about your interventions and how that tracks. And then when you take those interventions, you do little checks along the way. Yeah. And then you have an aim line to say, am I doing it right now? And then you go, no, quick, pivot, move. Right. But on lag data, you never get that opportunity. On that lead stuff, all those little tiny pieces that you do along the way, boom, you've got it, and you can make a change.
Yeah, that lead data is really actionable. Like a math teacher in class doing a 3-question little exit assignment that day, looking at that and then taking that data, maybe it's in the formative type model, it goes into a system. And then from that, she looks and says, 6 of my kids in my class didn't get that concept yesterday. Oh, in real time, the very next day, go back in, those 6 kids remediate that skill while working over here with this other group on other skills. That's managing the chaos in real time using lead data to pivot in the classroom or persevere if lead data says
this whole
they
data
all
thing,
got it. Right.
And that's where Harvey's platform comes in. Platform is not the word I was trying to use. But that's where
I really think it's
hard to describe.
How do you it's an interface.
Your interface.
It's an interface.
Because that's where it comes in.
Describe it like you said yesterday. I loved how because it's hard for me to describe what Smart Data Dashboard is. And people think of On Data Suite, it takes different data sources and kind of connects them. And so, but you said something yesterday where you said like it sits here and the other things are here.
So like imagine you have a circle and there is the smart data is right in the center, right? In the old days, and I'm making air quotes, everybody can see that, right? So in the old days, I would want to have Eduphoria is a product we use. So I'd want Eduphoria, and I'd want it to talk to my special ed software, right? Or I would want my special ed software to talk to my student services software, and they would all talk to each other together that way separately.
Yes.
But Harvey, what you have is this little guy right there in the dead center. He's my center point.
Smarty pants.
And
Smarty pants.
And that guy pulls all the information right to the center. And so as the educator, as the leader, whoever is wanting to be the user, all I have to do is click. I make one click and I don't have to know whether or not everything else talks to each other because that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But one of the things I love about your dashboard.
But it does talk to each other.
It does in a different way. So it all brings it together. And Harvey, genius man over here, designing what it does. When I look at the dashboard, so the thing I get to see is I can see an aim line. Oh, look, we intervened. These are the interventions we tried. And the aim line shows me what we've done. I can look at it and go, oh my gosh, Harvey's been absent 15 times in the last month.
Well, he's a troublemaker.
He's failing social studies and reading. That's weird. Why both? Because one is one or the other or something. And then I'm thinking, what else is going on? No homework. He's not. And then
PLC teams are
spoke
looking
to a counselor, and there was some.
And now we got ISS.
Interventions in play.
I'm like, okay, what is going on with Harvey? Well, all I have to do is go click, and all that information comes to one spot for me, and then I can make a plan. As opposed to going, let me open up Eduphoria. No offense to Eduphoria. Let me open up my special ed software. Let me open up my student software.
And we need
them. Open up On Data Suite. All of those have pieces, and really, honestly, and again, please, I love On Data Suite, but On Data Suite is only as good as the stuff that I load to it. 90% of what I load is, guess what? Lag data. Same thing with Eduphoria. All of that is. And so this is every day. Click of the button.
Let me expand on that a little bit, Crow. So we love data wherever it exists. So like On Data Suites to us is pre-processed data, and Eduphoria is just pre-processed data. So when we come into the district, they said, "Well, what do we need?" I said, "Let's get it all."
whatever you have.
And then make it.
Exactly.
Give me your Skyward stuff.
That's
Give
right.
me your
Yeah.
whatever.
We SIS, LMS assessments, big time in there. Assignments.
Yeah.
All the intervention stuff. And so we the first thing we do is say, no, don't get rid of anything. We want to encompass all that data. Our biggest competition is the word dashboard. They think, well, our student information has a dashboard. And I say that's not a competitor.
John's got this ARG Buddy dashboard,
Yeah.
he calls it. Right.
It's not the
That
same.
ain't no dashboard.
We're going to analyze it all. This is really like a healthcare record.
love
When you go to the doctor, they run all these assessments, and they don't give you one penicillin shot. They individually try to, but they got to do it quickly because they have another room they have to go to.
Yeah.
So our job is to make that happen. And we cherish all data sources we can find, and we tell them don't get rid of it until we get the problem solved. Then figure out maybe we can ask on data suites or other things like that. Can you get me richer data? Can you give me deeper data?
Yeah,
And-
different data.
So you just hit on that because you said it's like the medical assessment. So if you use anything like that right now, like I'm Baylor Scott and White is who we use, and I'm not plugging them. But the cool thing about that is if I go to my cardiologist and then I go to the internet,
It's all connected.
and I go to whomever else, and then
It's
they
amazing.
send me for a
Patient
blood
portal.
test.
It didn't used to be, but it's amazing
But
now.
I have
Patient
a patient portal.
That's
so
right.
all of those doctors can go to my patient
Great
portal
example.
and see exactly what all of my doctors have done, rather than me getting a prescription
Yeah.
from you and a prescription from you and a prescription somewhere else.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they
You're
find
right.
out that
I
So
didn't think
maybe
about
this is a
that.
learner. This is our
Yeah.
learner portal. Is what
I've
it
had
is,
firsthand
a learner
experience with that
portal.
recently,
Yeah.
Coral, and you're right. That was a mess a few
It
years
used to
back,
be, yeah.
and then now it's great. And we're trying to do that same thing here. We're just trying to say, wherever it lives, help in any way.
But
It's
I think
really
in some
a
ways,
student profile.
yeah, student profile. That's a great
Yeah.
example. And so I think though too, Harvey, like the portal, like I think about my patient portal when I go to it,
Right.
Yeah.
it does collect all that data, kind of put it in one place and give me some feedback.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really say, and by the way,
Mhm.
you might want to consider doing these other things if you want
Right.
to address some of these other risks, right?
Right.
I feel like
Yeah.
smart data, that's it. It says,
It
hey,
gives
and by the way,
Possible.
this is how you might want to intervene in
Yes.
these ways,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you might want to provide
Right.
a support in regards to this. So,
Well, one of the things I think that we do, I think we do well. But I've been coached. I do nothing on my own. I've always been coached to do something, right, or mentored to do it. But I will say that when we go in, a lot of times we focus on the discipline side because of disproportionate and discrimination. But one of the things I'm finding in that world, and I'll get back to the academics in just a second, is that they document the ISS and the OSS and the alternative placement and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraging them, document better with either with us or in your SIS, the administrative action, because those are, especially it taught me a long time ago that look for tentacles of evidence of success, right?
Right.
Because if they are LD or whatever, we have to look for soft indicators that things are getting better. It's not obvious sometimes.
Yes.
So in the discipline world, what we're looking for is, so you had administrative action. So what'd you do? Well, I coached them and mentored them. Take credit for that. That is,
Right.
don't not document
Right.
that.
That's-
Offset that
that's
with
the way
eventually
forward.
the ISS that you had to do.
Yes.
And so when I go in and I do this kind of major and minor thing, so back to your point about going back 2 years back and looking at that, and you say you've already started. We have a way we document this discipline, but we rank them as a minor and a major. Major would be ISS, out of classroom discipline, right? And so that's a major offense. But the minors they're not documenting is hurting them so bad. Is to say, so when you did administrative action, did you talk about like cause and effect and what you would happen next time? Did they mentor you?
Yeah.
Did you so all that stuff is really, it needs to be a credit to what we're doing every day. So we're trying to actually find this tentacle of evidence that they're doing the right things, but they're always being compared to 2 years ago.
Right. But this way we show evidence of actually that attempt to improve that outcome versus just punify.
Right.
And I'll tell you,
Think
go
about-
ahead.
Finding.
Think about this though, like let's for example, we have a biology teacher, and that biology teacher has a fantastic relationship with student A, whatever the student is, and that student is in trouble everywhere else, right?
That's right.
But the biology teacher, and I don't know why I picked biology, but the biology
Just relates
teacher
to 'em.
is documenting the good things that they're doing. That brings it right back to part of that social emotional learning with relationship, and they can say, this teacher has a relationship with the student, and these are the things they're intervening with.
Yeah.
That's our ticket.
Yeah.
And then when they can come back and go, okay, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Talk to me about how that works.
See,
Brings us back
We
to
want to
PLC.
implement this.
that's how you make that transition
Yes.
to proactive,
That's
right?
Yes.
That's
Someone's got to be watching for that. It might not be that teacher because they've got a lot of students coming in a lot of classes. It might be that counselor or interventionist who's looking for what's successful and what's not successful. Again, back to your point the other day, John. Do something, but document it in a way that we can now analyze it and become more proactive.
You know, I had a student. It really, the teacher isn't too busy though sometimes. And I had a student, because I have to share this. I love this kid. He was emotionally disturbed, and they said, absolutely not. This kid needs a lot of work. He needs a lot of help. Well, one day he came to my room and said, can I just borrow your phone? I need to call my dad. And I said, sure. And he had his guitar out. And I was like, hey, can I see your guitar?
Yeah.
And I played his guitar for him. He's like, oh my God. And he called his dad. He's like, Dad, listen to this. And I started to laugh.
Instant
and I was
connection.
like, he's like,
Instant
can you
connection.
do this more often? I said, well, I'm only available Wednesdays, but if you want to come Wednesdays. So he would sit in my room and play guitar and goes, hey, listen to this one. Listen to this one. Yeah. So I didn't even have the classroom relationship. This was another one. But those are the relationships that get built. I never documented that. If I could have documented that to say, this is why I don't see these behaviors with the student.
And that doesn't fit in a box either.
It doesn't.
Right?
It doesn't.
I mean,
but I could have, because you do have free form.
Yeah.
I just love, I love what you have, Harvey, because it's that piece that as educators, we just have been missing for so long. So we can be proactive because guess what? We all know our holes. I'll tell you, we know where our holes are usually. We just don't know how to put it all together in a picture that I can share with everyone.
Yeah, we all have a piece. Right, of that picture. We all have like a piece, but we don't have a way to put that whole picture together to get a clear image of what's occurring, so that then we can take a snapshot of it, do some things, and take another snapshot to say, is it the same picture? Is it prettier or is it uglier?
But I promise you guys, I know, as smart as you might think I am, it's because I Will Rogers was quoted as saying, "I've never met a man I didn't like." Right, and I'm a very logical thinker and a very linear thinker, and that just bothered the heck out of me. But when I went back and researched it a little bit, what he said was, "Every person I ever met has made me a better person."
Yeah.
So on that premise, I can honestly say I've never met a person I didn't like. And so all I'm saying is that this is a derivative of the minds that needed a problem solved. They just had somebody who knew how to do it. And I guarantee this is either physically or somewhere in your mindset, but it's on my computer. And it literally is a yellow sticky note on my computer that I look at every day when I'm on that computer. And it literally says, if not me, who will? Yeah. And I literally live that every day.
Someone must be the exception. Someone must take the risk. Someone must be excellent. Someone must invoke change. Why not let that person be me?
That's right.
Why not let that person be you?
You know,
why not? You know, that's I agree.
Now, how we make that tactical, you know, like at a classroom level, that's the challenge. Yeah. And everybody that might be listening to this, I've almost forgot people were recording, but that's kind of the way we are, right? When we get together, we get going. But anybody maybe listening to this might think, well, yeah, but they're missing this and this. Yeah. But I'll tell you, we're all going to leave this table and go back, and we're going to be very tactical wherever we're at. We're going to be helping in a junior high. We're going to be helping in an elementary. So although we're thinking at a high level, every once in a while we kind of get together and do this, but we go back to the real world of we're going to be in a classroom tomorrow.
That's right.
I don't know. I mean, just think about this. How many people that you know really, I mean, besides your fellow educators, have been in as many classrooms as we have. Nobody can. I can even tell my friends what I do because they don't
understand it. Well, first of all, they don't understand even the concepts that a lot of times, because education is an elusive thing for many people. But listen, guys, this has been fabulous. Like, okay,
we can talk for days.
Harvey, one thing I've heard you say, I've heard you talk to people in the conversations we've had many times. I've heard you say, you know, like, I don't want to be people. Like, I'm not a vendor. I don't want to go out and be people's vendor. I'm not selling a product. Like, I want to have a relationship with people. I know you're in schools in Texas doing the work. I know you are, got a lot going on in Arkansas and other states. I know you hop in your little plane and fly all over the place.
That's my addiction.
I keep trying to get you to fly into Clifton and come out to the farm. But So if people are interested in smart data or want to just better understand, like what is this all about? Like I think I know what they're talking about, but I don't really. Where do they go? How do they find out more?
Well, I'm glad you said that, John, because we don't really sell. We just one to get you two get you four. Mr. Sam Walton taught us that. They say you take care of one customer, they'll tell 5.
Yes.
If you don't, they'll tell 15.
Yes.
And so that was their model. And you know. And I enjoyed working for him, and he was very insightful and did a lot of ed tech type stuff.
Yeah.
But not ed tech, but technology stuff that I was involved in. Are fortunate. So bottom line is, here's what I would say. For example, when Beaumont was looking, they asked, well, I need to check your references and do all this. So I gave them a list of references, and I said, I don't want to be on the phone call. You call them. Yeah. I said, whatever they say, I'll live with. If they say I'm the worst, or if I'm the best, I'll live with.
Beaumont ISD.
Beaumont ISD. Yeah. So they called school districts, several school districts in Arkansas. Yeah. And the word they got back was, if you treat Harvey like a partner, he will do anything for you. Right. If you treat him like a vendor, he will treat you like a customer. Yeah. Right. And that's exactly. Yeah. I feel like I am with them, and I hurt when they hurt, but we all rise together. Yeah. And we live that every day. But if they want to know more about what we do, they can go to smartdatadashboard.com. Okay. And there's 3 videos on there. Yeah. I wouldn't pay attention to anything. It's a pretty simple website. There's 3 videos. What we do, how we do it, but thirdly, why we do it. Yeah. There's 3 videos. They're literally 2 minutes apiece. Yes. And once you watch those 3 videos, you'll just say, well, I need to have a conversation with him, tell him what we're doing. And if you're honest with me and you say it's more compliance or it's more academic, ABC, and you just tell me, then we can work together to take whatever you're doing and what you have, and we bring that together
and customize that.
Yeah, we customize it per district based on your needs. Because everybody, ISD, independent school district.
Yeah. Smartdatadashboard.com.
That's right. Just that simple.
And isn't there? It seems like I've been to a website, Hughes Education.
Well,
is that one still up or no?
No, I'm gonna bring that back up because people asked me to.
Well, I just didn't know.
But that was a lot about me, my background and stuff, and they wanted to see some flying videos. So I was throwing some flying videos because when I fly anywhere, I'm flying to a school district.
Yes, I love that.
I have literally landed on a grass strip behind a football field back in the early days in Missouri. Osceola, Missouri, and the special ed director took me out there, and I had her drive down this grass strip to figure out how long it was if I could fly out.
Well, Harvey, man, it has been a pleasure. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. I feel like this is, SPEDTalk is all about elevating the conversation, celebrating the people, the places, the organizations that are making things happen for kids. Kids with disabilities, kids with differing abilities. Our struggling learners and destination education. I may post this there too, but that's all about, how do we move forward in education? How do we honor what we've always done in education and really learn from what we've learned along this journey? But then how do we evolve and iterate and move forward into the 21st century? And so I really appreciate y'all. We're living in it, aren't we? So
listen, bless you guys for not giving up and not quitting and not being status quo. Because I mean, a groundswell turns into something. Yes. And it always does.
Yeah. I think choice, not change, right? Let's focus on choice. We all have choices every single day. The state tells us to do things. The feds tell us to do things, but we choose how we implement.
How we do it.
And so I feel like this is just another example of ways we can choose to do things a little bit differently and maybe have a different impact and outcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Enjoy being here.
Yeah. To continue to elevate the conversation, hit us up on Twitter at SPEDTalk 2020, where you can find links to all of our episodes and each of the resources that we discussed today.
John, also links to the resources will be available at our podcast site.
And if you found these resources helpful, be sure to share them with a friend, because information should always flow through us, not to us.
That will do it for this episode of SPEDTalk.
And remember, courage creates culture and kindness keeps us connected.
Until the next time, I'm Pam.
And I've been John.
And this is
SPEDTalk.
Living in the moment, and the moment is the future.
With